Hello and welcome to Mystic Visions with DrShiny. This is a monthly tarot card reading for Scorpio for the month of May. So welcome, Scorpio friends. Thank you for joining. As always, if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe and like, and leave me some comments at the end of the video to let me know what you thought of the video. So let's go ahead and get started with your reading, my Scorpio friends. So you have the Strength card, Queen of Swords, Four of Cups, Knight of Cups, Knight of Wands, the Five of Cups, Ace of Cups, Knight of Swords, Eight of Swords, and the Page of Swords. Okay, so there's a lot of swords and a lot of cups here. You do have a wand in there, but a lot of swords and a lot of cups. So there may be some kind of emotional turmoil, and there could be a little bit of a situation of like a divide between your heart and your mind, where, you know, one's pulling one way, one's pulling another. You may feel a little bit of a problem with that. Your current situation is the Strength in the reverse. So you're kind of feeling like you have a little lack of willpower, or that you are unable, or let's just say not confident in getting through some situation. You may be feeling like it's a little bit out of control or too much for you to handle, something like that. But it's really always the case that it's kind of just your mentality and how you approach it. Most people, hardly anybody has things truly under control, but a lot of people just kind of pretend that they do and put on a confident face and then kind of work it out and learn as they go. So not necessarily important for you to actually have that strength, but it is important for you to feel that you do. Okay, what's crossing you is this Queen of Swords. So what this can mean is that a lot of this situation is caused just by you being a little bit too self-reflective, or too kind of caught in your head, and or introspective. So and it's not a bad thing to be introspective at all, but it can kind of, you can overdo it, right? Everything exists in a sort of balance, and there's a healthy way to do things, and there's a little bit of overdoing. So this being what's crossing you or influencing you means that there's perhaps just a little bit too much of an internal focus on the thoughts, and it could be, it's kind of overthinking. Okay, so you're moving away from, or coming from, the Four of Cups in the reverse. So there perhaps was some kind of there was a realization that you couldn't just be a stick in the mud, that you couldn't have a negative attitude, and you've kind of come away from that, and you've tried to have a little bit more of a positive attitude, but it may be that things have kind of like knocked you down, and you're kind of in a moment of weakness, or something like that. But you have in the past recognized that a negative attitude is not gonna help you. So it may be about tapping back into that and holding strong and steady with the path that you've already kind of chosen. What you're moving toward is this Knight of Cups in the reverse. So you're becoming a little bit hesitant to go with the flow, or be romantic. You're perhaps even becoming a little bit closed off. And that could be, again, because of that lack of confidence. There could be a feeling like you aren't capable of going through this. Sorry. You aren't capable of going through this, or you don't have the energy or the stamina, or something to that effect. I have some pepper in my throat or something. Water. Okay, so your foundation card is another knight. You have, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but you have three knights in the deck here, or in your spread. And knights are a slightly more mature than the page, but they're still not completely matured. So they have a tendency to go forward with a certain way of thinking and be a little bit stubborn about it. but they don't have a ton of finesse the way that some of the other cards do. Some of the kings and the queens and things like that. They have a little bit more maturity and finesse. But with the Knight of Wands here in your foundation, suggests that maybe you've been a little bit too hesitant to act. You kind of don't jump in quite enough and just go with it, go with the flow. You are becoming a little bit reserved, perhaps guarded, or not really open, you know. And it could be because you've been through some things, and life's kind of beat you down a little bit, and you're hesitant to become vulnerable because you've already been so damaged. You're not looking forward to happening anymore. Your crowning thoughts is the Five of Cups. It's a similar energy to that Four of Cups, which you've just left behind. But so now you're in the next phase. Your mentality is in that next phase. The Five of Cups, you know, after you recognize the value in having a positive mentality, the Five of Cups, the lesson here is that there's usually 2 cups that are upright, and then there's 3 that are knocked over. And the figure is normally paying attention to the ones that are knocked over and not paying attention to the ones that are still upright. Meaning that you have to learn how to focus on the good in every situation. And remember, the cups, this is about cultivating your emotional awareness or your emotional stability, right? So at this point in the journey, it's about recognizing that you can always look at a situation in a way that feels bad or that you don't like or that hurts, but you can always look at the bright side as well. There's always positives and negatives to every situation. Really bad situations, it's very hard to find the positives, but it's still possible, you know, and it really just takes the will to do that, to try to see those positives in whatever situation you find yourself. So try to do that, and things will work out a little bit better. Let's see something here with the whoops. Let's put that back. Okay, so what we have for your advice is the Ace of Cups. And this Ace of Cups represents, and it's in the reverse, so this represents not rejecting any particular kind of emotions. So whatever you've been going through here, there's a tendency for you to perhaps want to be happy all the time and never feel sad or never feel angry, or try to reject certain emotions. And I don't know what those particular emotions are, but there's something that you kind of avoid, that you don't want to feel. Maybe you don't want to feel vulnerable, you don't want to feel, you might even be kind of jaded to the point where you don't want to feel gooey, mushy types of love, or just those kind of things, right? This is a reminder that there is no such thing as bad feelings or bad emotions. There are no wrong feelings. So be prepared to look at your feelings and recognize that there is something there for you to incorporate into your being. There's at least some balance of every type of emotion, every experience that is good to be incorporated in your life, just possibly not to excess, right? So like, the pain of loss is not something you want to frequently experience, but if you close yourself off to it completely, it's kind of more like living in denial. And if you're in denial that the people that you love will eventually, pass away, then it can lead you to taking them for granted, and you perhaps don't spend enough time with them, or you just kind of assume they're always going to be there, and then one of these days they're not, and you are left with regret and this hole in you, which is basically all the time that you should have spent with them, and now you can't, right? The Fears card, I'm sorry, we're not at the Fears yet. We're at the Environment, which is the Knight of Swords in reverse. So, and this is what you look out and see around you. It could be some person that's sitting right next to you. It could be, you know, your household or even, you know, your society, your coworkers, that kind of thing. But what you look out and see is the Knight of Swords, which is somebody who thinks they know everything, but they're kind of rash and quick to jump to conclusions and that kind of thing. They're not exactly quite as wise as they tend to think they are, and you're aware of that. So, for whatever reason, you know, just keep an eye on this person. You have this Queen of Swords energy, which should be able to keep that knight in check, but don't allow him to push you to any sort of rash decisions if they're trying to influence you to feel like they know what you should do. Okay, your fears card is the Eight of Swords, and this represents you're afraid of feeling trapped. You're afraid of feeling it could be possibly a fear of commitment even, but afraid of not having options or freedom or something like that. And the lesson here is that that lack of freedom that you're afraid of is really just something in your mind. It's a feeling or a thought, and it doesn't represent a real situation. So let me give you an example. Perhaps you have a fear of commitment, and this, again, this doesn't apply to everybody. This is just an example. But perhaps you have like a fear of commitment. You don't want to get married or something like that to somebody who cares about you. And the reason you don't is because when you think about that feeling of, you know, I'm married now and I can't get unmarried. Well, now hold on a minute. Like, yeah, you can. You can get divorced, and that's not the worst thing in the world. But, you know, holding back from that decision, I mean, ask yourself, is it the fear of commitment, or is it just you don't want to make that decision? Because if you don't want to make that decision, or you're confident that you don't want to be married in that kind of a circumstance, then it's good for you not to. But if it's really just kind of like a fear of the feeling of being trapped or committed to something, then you have to recognize, first of all, that that's just a thought, that's just a feeling, and you can get out of these things if you want to. And so it's really your mind that's making you feel trapped, not the situation itself. Okay, so the overall message or long-term outcome is this Page of Swords. And this means that you're still learning. You're not at the end of the journey yet. You're still figuring things out. You don't have everything figured out as much as you think. You might be prone, or you might have a good mental outlook on yourself. You might be fairly self-aware, but you might not have a really good understanding of how other people work yet. This isn't the end of your journey, in other words. This is kind of more of like the beginning. This is you going down a road, and that's a good way to think about it too, because if you're thinking about this situation as though it's like the ultimate goal or the end-all be-all, you might be raising the stakes pretty high on yourself, right? You might be thinking that this is a big decision and you have to be very careful, and that can create a lot of hesitation, and it can really kind of stifle the whole thing from happening at all. But if you can step back and say, okay, this is really just baby steps, this is just me moving forward, and I can always back out of this situation, or something can go differently. And, you know, if you're like going back to that example of like the marriage, okay, well, just get engaged, or maybe just like move in with each other and see how that works out. And that way it's not such a big deal. If you're afraid of how it would look to people that you know that it didn't work out, well, frankly, who gives a damn? You know, it's not their life, and most people have to go through these kind of things. What is the virtue in just making it perfect the first time through? I don't get our fascination as humans with that, about, you know, never failing. Failing is great. I mean, failing is how you learn, and if you're not failing, you're really not trying hard enough. You're not innovating enough. And so become comfortable with failure and wear it as a badge of pride, because it means that you're trying things that other people are not trying, that people are too afraid to try. So applaud yourself for that sort of bravery, and don't be afraid to admit that you don't know everything or that you're still learning. Okay, that's about it for your reading today, Scorpio friends. pretty good one for you. This is one of my favorite ones I've done so far for this month. So hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And again, please leave me some comments and let me know what you think. And I'll see you guys next month.